So this week, AMD hosted an analyst call for its investors, where it basically divulged its performance in Q1 this year compared to last year. Gaming revenue was down by 48%. Some of this was down to poor performance of Radeon GPUs in the PC space. But there's problems in console land. If you look at gaming, demand has been quite weak. That's well known. Also, they have inventory issues. We guided down more than 30% in the first and second quarters, and the second half will be lower than the first half. This is how we are looking for the gaming business this year. Now, if we sort of see where we are in the current console generation, we would have been at about, I guess, let me have a think. 2016 in the last generation.
Little, yeah.
Right? 2016.
Well, 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Time
in that period. So basically, the console industry at that point seemed to be in rude health. We just had the launch of the PlayStation 4 Pro. We were looking forward to Xbox One X. And we also had, the revised versions of the Xbox and the PlayStation, small, slim, light consoles, very appealing, that arrived with price cuts. Now, what we're seeing now is something quite different. We do have a Pro console coming this year, but only from Sony. And meanwhile, cost reductions on existing consoles and smaller form factors have only been achieved to a very limited degree. Oliver, I'm going to go to you first on this, because this does seem to be indicating that there's trouble in console land, and potentially we are going to need some sort of disruptive force to make consoles as viable as they were in prior generations.
Yeah, I'm really worried. And there are other really negative signs in the industry as well, like Microsoft in their last earnings, they said that Xbox hardware was down 31%, right? That's pretty brutal. And their guidance is not very good either. Right. And then I saw that Square Enix just took $140 million in write-offs, basically, from their game catalog in canceled projects. So they're canceling a ton of projects, presumably unannounced projects, and just saying we need to focus more on their tentpole games, actually, which is the opposite of where I would like things to go personally.
Right.
So it's just not a great sign for the console business overall, and I am concerned about the strength and health of the console business. Because what we're looking at right now, realistically, with the relative, failure is a tough word, but I mean the relative lack of success for the Xbox this generation, even relative to the Xbox One generation, and the PS5 seeming to keep rough pace with the PS4, but now slowing down somewhat, it seems. We're getting a smaller pool of gamers at the same time as game costs are absolutely ballooning, and I worry that we could be seeing a pretty severe industry crunch that might not result in a great outcome, either for game players or game developers. Obviously, we've seen some layoffs recently in the news as well. So I am just a little bit worried about this, because I think games really should be hitting their stride given how advanced consoles are and how great the game experiences are nowadays. But that's just not the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, we should be looking at cross-gen now being over and a new wave of amazing games coming that are keeping people engaged and interested, and making people want to upgrade. I'm still thinking, there is still this argument that there's a lot of PlayStation 4 owners out there who maybe are only playing the older games like Fortnite, which are still relevant, which still play fine on their existing machines, and maybe don't feel there is the need to upgrade, which is, again, quite concerning. But at the same time, we're hearing great things from Microsoft about gaming revenue, if not the hardware revenue, which suggests that they're doing quite well in terms of their overall ecosystem, but it isn't reflected in the console. And I think ultimately the problem maybe facing Xbox is that, if their model is based on selling games rather than selling consoles, I guess that's always been the case to a certain extent. You need a unifying box that people rally around, and if Xbox Series isn't doing it for them, then what is going to be the generation, the approach next gen? For Sony, I honestly think they're going to stick with their existing model, but maybe be more welcoming towards PC, because they're going to be looking at that Helldivers 2 revenue that's coming in. And they're going to be hugely excited about what's happening when they dual release on PS5 and on PC. Alex, what do you think's going to happen now?
Well, I think to kind of say something that I think John would say a little bit as part of this, and Oliver hinted at it a bit, like with the Square Enix focusing on their tentpole franchises and perhaps eliminating a lot of the smaller titles. Like they had stuff like Triangle Strategy and like some smaller games. There's like a greater variety of titles, and I think John would point this out too, that there's been a larger consolidation to longer term projects, which have a lot of great associated risk with them, but they're also highly risk averse. And I think looking at the last maybe 8 months of game releases of things that have really lit up the charts and got people talking about game design again, in interesting new ways. You used to have recently Manor Lords, you've got Pale World, you've got Helldivers too. Games that Helldivers 2 is a little bit unique because it had a longer, smaller development team that was building the game for quite some time. But the other games are also they're kind of smaller enterprises, and they're building games that have different levels of ambition, but they're, very specific and unique. And they're crafting a very specialized experience. And they don't necessarily require buttloads of money to make. And I think that is the only focusing on these larger franchises and really staggered releases is leaving these dry periods, and it's not driving interest of a younger generation of people who honestly may not even care about stuff like The Last of Us, or I think there's a bit of a niche that it's easy to forget that younger people are driving the game market, new players, that is, and just catering to the old people who have older tastes and only look at AAA stuff. I don't think that's a healthy route forward for the console industry at all. And I think looking at PC and seeing how the success of indie and AA or smaller teams there is just so much greater, because they can release to early access very easily. There's a lot of community engagement. You can wish list on Steam and have all this great driving discussion about a game. And I think that's something that I would love to see both manufacturers focus on more on the next generation. It's not the spectacle of Marvel 1943 or whatever that's going to be, but it's still gets at to the core of what makes gaming so fun. So I think I would love to see that. And that would be another push beyond the hardware stuff, which you guys already talked about. I think just pushing for a different type of software would be really key.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was a counter report to this saying that overall gaming revenue is actually up slightly, but that is including mobile, as you North American types pronounce it, even though it's got an I in it.
And an E at the end. My goodness, it should be in a long I. Mobile. Yeah.
And stuff like Monopoly Go is driving massive amounts of revenue at the moment, but it's not really our wheelbase. And I do think that our wheelhouse even, and I do think often we kind of have somewhat narrow tunnel vision in terms of what we're actually looking at when we describe gaming. But obviously there's been talk from Phil Spencer about the mobile market being quite important for Xbox going forward and being a key reason why they acquired Activision Blizzard King. But I'm curious to see how that can dovetail with game development in other areas. You're not going to be playing the latest Gears on a smartphone, are you? Really, realistically. So I'm quite curious to see how they're going to sort of manage those various market sectors. Let's take this question from Retro Sean. With regards to the reports that AMD's graphics card and gaming console-related sales are down, my question is this: what did they expect? As the owner of 3 Radeon graphics cards from the 6000 series in my household, I have nothing affordable to upgrade to. 7800 XT is the same as the 6800 XT, and the now trio of 7900 cards are too expensive and not good enough for the price. What does AMD need to do, aside from replacing FSR with something actually as good as DLSS, to succeed? I think if you bought a 6000 card, there's probably very little reason to upgrade to 7000.
Oh, yeah.
Similarly, it's the case with NVIDIA 30 series to 40 series. Typically, they're sort of targeting people from lower older GPUs for that upgrade cycle. I think typically it's about 3 to 5 years that a GPU is sort of used in a typical gaming PC. So I think viewed through that lens, the actual lineup is okay. I think the real question is, how come AMD just can't make headway against NVIDIA? RDNA 3 isn't bad. RDNA 2, I'd argue, was an excellent counterpoint to Ampere and had the full stack of GPUs top to bottom, and it still didn't really shift the needle. I think, that's something to bear in mind. I don't actually think that sort of gen-on-gen upgrades are actually that common, though. Yeah, I don't really know what more we can add to that. I mean, it's a pretty grim outlook for this particular console generation. We've seen reports on Sony's financials that they're concerned about it as well. Their margin is rapidly declining. It just seems to be the case that something radical is going to be needed. And there's various rumors going around about what Microsoft is up to. And this week, Jez Corden shared some of his thoughts on a private Discord server, which were unfortunately reported as actual sort of leaks / reports. But I honestly think that Jez is probably onto something there.
Oh, yeah.
Xbox, if you've got so many studios that are primed for multi-platform output, and you're the custodian of franchises like Minecraft, Call of Duty, etc., Doom, it kind of makes sense to look more towards multi-platform. And it's going to be painful for the console fans in the short term, but in the long term, I think it is the best route forward for a prosperous Xbox. But I do think they need a flagship box, and these handhelds, I think they're going to do them a lot of good things. But ultimately, there's got to be some way for Xbox to co-opt itself more into the PC space, and I think that needs to be across the board, hardware, software. And, if they are talking about things like quote unquote side loading Steam onto an Xbox, it becomes the one box to play them all. I think it's a pretty good strategy. But yeah, Oliver, thoughts?
My only worry about this, and I completely understand why this is something that Microsoft is pursuing. I think it's a good idea from their position in the market. I think trying this new approach, trying to integrate it more with PCs, trying to open up the platform a little bit, sounds very exciting in a lot of ways, but I hope it's still very much a console. I hope that's still the case, or at least that it offers a good console-like configuration of the box, because there is something that's nice about a console where it's just a fire and forget experience. It's super simple. Set it up in 20 minutes and get to playing games that are optimized for it, that are built for it. You have a big install base of people to sell to. Those are all very important things, and I just hope that doesn't go away in a future where Microsoft is opening up the platform. I think that there's probably a degree of compromise there, but I still want to go to the store, buy a box, a big plastic box, set it up very quickly, have a curated experience where I'm not fiddling with a settings menu or something like that. I still want it to be a console, even if it is integrated more with that PC ecosystem.
Yeah. Alex?
I don't know. I'm curious because I think they're already a little bit further away from that ideal to a certain degree with the multiple boxes. The online connectivity drives that away. The next box won't have the ability to just plop in a disk. There's install times as well too there, but you'll probably with the next box, you'll have to set up your account. This is already like 30 minutes. I'm serious. Like, have you ever installed Windows 11? Like, this is not a small task anymore, unfortunately. And then you're going to be downloading the game. Then you're going to be going into the game and you're going to sign into the game and you're going to, create a profile there. And, then you're going to go into the game and you're going to choose maybe your performance, your quality mode. Like these consoles are already like leaping into some of the more unfortunate aspects of PC territory. And I don't know. Their balance is going to be so interesting to see. And I do think Microsoft is the only company to do it right, but they could also do it terribly wrong. Like there's aspects of Windows 11 that I hate. So I don't know. Like man, I want them to do it well though, because I would like to see, like people enjoy the aspects of PC gaming that I like if they want to get into it a bit more. I want to see those things come to console. So I don't know. It's a hard thing to talk about.
Well, they've got the GDK at the moment, which in theory streamlines development between console and PC, and I think they need to take that one step further. I think there's a lot going on in terms of the PC space that maybe we don't have full visibility on at the moment. There's the spectre of ARM being a part of PC gaming going forward, which is quite interesting, which would work hand in hand with a console and with handhelds, of course. And obviously, Apple has made the transition to ARM very successfully. I think there's probably going to be things happening there. I think we're sort of getting flashes, a sort of, occasional sort of leaks here and there about things that we don't fully understand yet in terms of how the full ecosystem is going to play out going forward. In terms of what can be done right now, I mean, the concept of the next Xbox basically being a PC of whatever description. Yes, I think it is going to be the case that it would be the PC version you get, but it would have fundamental optimizations and optimized settings that would give you that plug and play experience that you kind of expect from a console right now, which in theory could only mean good things for PC as well if it is fundamentally the same code base. And maybe there would be, sort of like a recommended settings on the PC side that would reflect what's happening on consoles. That would be quite helpful, possibly. But beyond that, I mean, yeah, it's all to play for, but obviously I do think we're seeing some fundamental change in the offing here, and I am concerned what's going to happen in the short term, because all of this stuff is long-term changes. In the short term, I am slightly concerned about what's happening with the consoles, especially on the Xbox side, where the hardware sales, I mean, it is challenging, right? And the console is fundamentally the home of Game Pass. You need that machine that is a Game Pass machine. And if it's not selling, that's problematic. I guess, there is talk from Microsoft that we'll learn more about hardware towards the end of the year. So I guess, just have to wait and see.